Welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. My name is Audrey Monkey, and I am your host. For more than 3 decades, I've been a summer camp director, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents. I really enjoy sharing stories, tips, and ideas to help others who care about young people raise a generation of kind, self-reliant, optimistic kids who become thriving adults. If you're interested in summer camp, parenting, or happiness, you've come to the right place. If you're a regular listener to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, then you've heard me mention Laura Vanderkam's book, Off the Clock, which I read in August. I am thrilled to have Laura on the podcast today. Laura Vanderkam is the best-selling author of What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast, All the Money in the World, 168 Hours, Grind Hopping, and I Know How She Does It. She is the co-host with Sarah Hart Unger of the podcast Best of Both Worlds, which I've recently started listening to and really am enjoying. Laura's TED Talk, How to Gain Control of Your Free Time, has been viewed more than 5 million times. Her work has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Fortune, and other publications. Laura lives with her husband and their 4 children outside Philadelphia. I'm thrilled to have Laura Vanderkam on episode 56 of the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. Well, I am so thrilled today. I have Laura Vanderkam on the podcast. If you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you know that I have been talking about her and her book, Off the Clock, incessantly on my blog and on other podcast episodes. And she's here today. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you for having me.
So, Laura, tell a little bit about your background and how you came to write this book, Off the Clock.
Well, I write about time management and productivity. I have a couple books out on that topic, including 168 Hours, What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast, I Know How She Does It, and now Off the Clock. I find the topic of time absolutely fascinating because we all have the same amount of time. We all have 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week. And so I love that when you find people who are doing amazing things professionally, and then you find out that they're also doing amazing things personally, that they don't have any more time than the rest of us. They may have other things going for them, that's fine, but they don't have any more time. And so that is something that maybe we can learn from, how they're allocating their hours, the ways the rest of us can pick up on. And so I've spent the past 10 years or so studying that topic exactly. Where does the time really go? Really looking at people's schedules and seeing what we can glean from that. And I know it's been very helpful for me to learn best practices out there as I attempt to make my own life. Writing my books, doing my various other projects, raising 4 kids with my husband, and we were trying to enjoy that as well. So I'm trying to make all those pieces fit together.
Well, I loved just reading all about when you shared about your family. So why don't you share how old your kids are now? And I especially like, since I've just started more of the writing part, but I've been working as a mom since my kids were little, I really loved hearing how you figured out how to balance that. But why don't you talk about how old your kids are and, what's going on with your family right now?
Yeah, so my kids are 11, 8, 6, and 3, although they're almost 11, 9, 7, and 3. We have a birthday switchover like that. They come fast and furious in the fall. We're getting into the big kid stage. Everyone's out of diapers, which is incredibly exciting. That's the first time that has happened in a while. But we're juggling the usual stuff of schools. This year, I actually have all 4 kids in schools, but in 3 different schools: middle school, elementary school, preschool. So this start of the school year has been an interesting experiment in figuring out how we can get everyone where they need to go at the times that they are supposed to be there. We like to do various things. The kids have their activities they're in. We also like to travel as a family, try to have fun weekends as well. I spend a lot of time thinking about what we can do on weekends in order to really, enjoy our time together and have various adventures and make memories that hopefully the kids will take with them.
Yeah, I think I started following you on Instagram, and I think you were at a national park or something, not pretty recently, maybe at the end of summer, and you posted
Yellowstone.
Okay, Yellowstone, the national park. That's the one to visit. So there are many concepts in your book that really resonated with me, but I think kind of one of the overarching ones is just how we think about time can really change how we perceive it. So do you want to talk a little bit about the study that you did where you had people track just one day, I believe it was, and then how they felt about their own time, like time perception, I think you called it. And what were a few of the things that you found about the way people who feel like they have enough time or more time, what are some of the things that they do differently than what I see or feel most people do, which is, I'm so busy, I never have enough time for anything. What are some of the tips you learned from studying these people?
Yeah, I mean, time is all about how we perceive it because, I mean, again, we all have the same amount of time. It always moves at the same rate, and yet that's not really how we experience time. And so with anything like this, when we develop a certain story about our lives, we tend to look for evidence that then supports it. And that's just the way the human brain works. And so when we do walk around with the story that I'm so busy, you will consciously look for evidence for moments that seem to show that. And in any given life, you could definitely find moments that seem crazy, busy, harried. That's the nature of life. But you can also find other moments. So it's just the question of which moments you choose to see and which become your story. So I'm interested in stories, obviously, and in how we talk about our time. But I'm also interested in data. Because, I know from all the research I've done on time that people will tell you all sorts of things about time. So you want to ask somebody, what's important for you as you, get so much done in your life? They'll tell you something, but whether that's true or not is who knows. So I wanted to get some data on this question of time perception. So I recruited 900 people who had full-time jobs and also had families at home. To track their time for a day. So the reason for those two categories is those are the two that are most associated with time stress. The easiest way to feel no time stress whatsoever is to be retired. But that, we can't all do that. Or you could skip having a family, which also has some downsides too. So, people who were working full time had a family. They tracked their time on a March Monday. And then I had them answer questions about how they felt about their time. So I could compare the schedules of people who felt like time was abundant with people who felt like time was scarce. And some of the things that you'd think would be obvious turned out not to be the case. So work hours weren't really drastically different. The people with the lowest time perception scores only worked about 18 more minutes per day on average than the average number. So it wasn't like they were working around the clock. Their commutes weren't significantly longer. I thought maybe that was it. But it turns out it's really what you do with that discretionary block of time that isn't work, sleep, commute that influences how you feel about your time. So do you spend your leisure time interacting with friends and family? Do you spend it doing reflective activities like journaling or meditating? Do you do things like exercising or reading? Or do you spend that discretionary time on social media? And fun as social media is, if it winds up consuming too much of your time, you're going to feel starved for time. Because it turns out that the people with the highest time perception scores were far more likely to use this discretionary time for the good stuff, right? For hanging out with friends, for thinking about life, for reading books, for doing adventures. And the people who felt like time was scarce were not being nearly that intentional with their time.
Yeah, you talk about that. It's being mindful of time, which, we're learning about the importance of mindfulness in all areas of life because we're all feeling so distracted by life. And it's kind of like, I always think of when I'm scrolling, I think of it as mindless scrolling versus mindful is, oh, you know what? I have this friend I haven't talked to in a while. I'm going to touch base with her, maybe see if she wants to go for a walk today. I have been changing my behavior since I read your book. I'm really, because you say, I think the line is, people are a good use of time. And in my mind, I'm thinking people are a great use of time. And this morning, I talked to my sister on the phone for 45 minutes while drinking coffee. Didn't make it to my run because of that, but that's okay. I'm going to try to figure it out later. But, just realizing and reframing that is the priority. Sometimes those people, and that is time very well spent and just feeling like I feel good about starting my day, having a long chat with my sister. And it makes me feel better. Whereas I think before I matured in my time thinking, I was so loved getting things checked off my list.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be harder to just say, oh yeah, I just have time to chat for a while. So I had a couple questions for you because first of all, I want to say that in anticipation of this podcast episode, I wanted to track my time for a week. And I had told myself when I read your book, I was at camp, and my schedule during the summer is very different from the rest of the year. I have a lot more sort of freedom in choosing my time during the rest of the year. I can pretty much make my own schedule from September to May, but June, July, August are very much like I'm at breakfast at a certain time and I have assembly and I have, parents to call back. And so it's more set. So I was like, I'll wait till after camp. Well, as has been my problem, and this is one of the things that I just wasn't good at following through. I only made it. I'm showing you my thing. Even though everyone can't see.
You only made it to Monday at 11 o'clock. That's
I know. So I guess part of it is, and I know you talk about in this book, but for those of us who maybe aren't really good at tracking things, like I've been a failure at my husband did that calorie tracking thing. It totally worked for him. And I can do these things for like a couple days, but I tend to have trouble with like a long-term like tracking things. So what are some tips for people like me who maybe aren't as good at doing that, like intentional tracking? Are there any things that you've learned from people who aren't as good as you are at this kind of stuff of how we can do it?
Yeah, well, essentially, I do have some ideas, but first I want to ask you what you think the roadblock was. Was it that you forgot? Was it that you weren't sure how to describe your time? Was it that you felt resistance to it? Like, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm curious what it was.
Good question. I haven't analyzed that. I think I kind of forgot. I think it just got kind of stuck under my, I tend to be, I love projects. I have so many different things going on. I have lots of piles and I have, camp and writing and then kids calling. And I just have like a lot going on. And I like that. I like that sort of full, fun life. I think I started it. I was like, I'm going to do this. And then I didn't even see it again for 2 days.
Well, I mean, there's certainly something of developing a habit about it. For me, it's a habit. For some people, what I say is like, well, try and link it with something else. Like, every time you go to the bathroom, right? When you come back, do it. That would be like a trigger that, to remember if you could link it with that. It could also, if you let go of the idea that it needs to be exact, just check in at the end of the day. So like do it while you're brushing your teeth at night. Write down what you've done since the morning. And then it's done, right? Like it doesn't have to be exact. It's just, within sort of the hour, you can probably remember a lot of the previous 24 hours. Yeah. That's my problem. I'm such I like to be exact. Oh, okay.
So probably, I think what happened was probably, by the end of the day, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't remember exactly. I'm pretty sure I did this and this. And I also, another thing is, I think maybe I'm usual or maybe it's unusual, but I have a really kind of unusual daily schedule. It's not very consistent by choice. I actually kind of like that. So, sometimes I'll do, meet a friend for a walk on a Tuesday morning at 9. And then other times I'll be at the office for 10 hours working on a project. I just kind of have this very, not steady, normal kind of schedule. I also, with my kids mostly being away from me, I have a lot of just like calls and FaceTimes with them that I spend a lot of time on, and those add up. And if I'm available, I love to chat with my kids. So I might be in the middle of, I'm writing from 12 to 2, and then somebody calls and that gets broken up or something. So I think maybe that's for me, what will be good is I think at the end of the day, like linking it to maybe, when I get in bed with my book, just pulling it out and saying, okay, where was I today? Approximately what did I do? So I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that and not try to be so exact, because by having these half-hour things, I was actually almost started using it as a planning tool, which is not what I need to do. I need to do it as a
retrospective, not prospective. No, and I think letting go of the need to be exact is important, because it's not about every bathroom break. It's not about, was I writing and then I checked an email? Like, I wouldn't put stuff like that. I mean, I'll just put work and maybe I'll put what I was working on, but often not. Like, because I haven't really been trying to. It's just sort of holistically getting a sense of where the time goes.
So what are your main categories? You would just say, so whether, like for me, whether I was answering an email, doing some writing, doing a project for camp, I could just call it work.
Yeah, you could just call it work.
This was work time. And then you have like maybe eating time, sleeping time, exercise,
hang out with family,
friends,
friends.
Okay.
Driving somewhere or just relaxing at the house. I mean, you could just put hang out with family or, relax at house or whatever. Like it's not, which could encompass all sorts of things. But it's not like at some point in there of sitting at the table, did I also go sort the mail pile? Who cares, right? It's not about trying to be exact. It's sort of getting a holistic perspective of your time. But
that's super helpful because, and also I just want to say to listeners, you can go to Laura's website and all you have to do is sign up for her emails, which are really helpful and have lots of good information. And you can download the paper version of this time management worksheet. And I'm going to download a clean copy and start over and not try to be so exact. Because I was saying like laundry, packing, emails, preparing for this talk. I was doing these things too detailed. And you're right. Retrospective, I should have just said chores, work.
Yeah. Well, and the upside of being a little bit less exact. I mean, one of the things I've found with time tracking is I do try to do stuff for like a half-hour block because then it fills a half-hour block, which is helpful. But answering your question, I mean, I know some people are just not going to do this. I do think if you want to spend your time better, it is incredibly helpful to figure out where the time is going now. Because it's like any decision, you want to have good data. And if you don't have good data, like you don't know if you're changing the right thing. Because people will tell you all sorts of stories about where the time goes. If you track it, you might realize that's actually not the problem you have. I know for me, I thought I wasn't spending any time in the car because I don't commute. Like I have a home office. Turns out I was spending more than an hour a day in the car. Like that's a whole hour. Like was not even in my story that I was telling myself. Good to know that, right? Then I can figure out like, do I want to have audiobooks or podcasts or like listen to certain kinds of music? But like because I wasn't even thinking of that and didn't have the data to make those decisions, like anything I would have told myself about where my time goes was going to be completely wrong because I was in the car for more time than I was reading, for more time than I was exercising. For all these categories that I think of as important were less than this category I was completely even ignoring. So, worth doing. That said, if you are not going to do it or you try and just can't get through it, you can kind of back into spending your time wisely, but just thinking about it. Like at the end of the day, look back over the day and say, well, what did I like about today? Like what worked? Like what was great? Let me celebrate. Yay. Good job. What do I want to spend more time doing? So whatever it is that you were doing that you would like to scale up in terms of your time, ponder that, think about what you would like to spend less time doing, and then sort of look at what the next day is going to bring and ask yourself, well, what could I do to do more of those things that I want to do and less of the things I don't want to do? And as you keep daily making those decisions, you can start to spend your time in different ways. And once you start doing that a little bit, then you might start moving to a more weekly perspective on time. Because I find that, the day is great, but mostly we live our lives in weeks. And so you can say, well, I want to volunteer more, but like you're not going to on Tuesday. So like that's not really helping you all that much. But if you look at the whole week and you might say, oh, well, actually, here's this, Sunday evening commitment I was thinking of taking on that might fit in my life. And so then by planning your weeks ahead, that's going to happen. And you can start asking in a week, what would I like to spend more time doing?
I like that concept because that is better for people who don't have a super traditional schedule or that kind of thing. It might work better. I had a question for you about people like me. I think like teachers, I think of stay-at-home parents, camp professionals who have like a seasonal sort of different, like really things change seasons. So like, a parent who stays home with kids when the kids go back to school, their time kind of changes, how they're using it and everything. Is that how you work in your quarterly goals? So you talk about that in your book, having, I think is it personal, career, relationships, and self.
Okay. I think those tend to be the three major areas for most of us. If your life changes a lot seasonally, and there's lots of people who are like this, like you said, teachers or camp directors, or, maybe it's accountants, like around the various deadlines for that. Their lives are crazy, but not the rest of the time. So, it helps to know where your time goes during the busy times. It also helps to know where your time goes during not busy times. And those will influence, in general, if people have incredibly busy periods, it's more helpful to think in terms of, what are sort of my non-negotiables that need to happen during this time in order to make me feel like life is doable. Limited goals for that, but figure out what those are, do them. Everything else can go. But then know that it's limited, because when you get to the less busy time, then you can start doing some of these things that you put off during that time, and you can proactively do things that you're not going to do during your busy times. So that's when you make your get-togethers with friends, or you schedule your dentist appointment. Like an accountant is never going to do the dentist appointment in March, but that's where you do it in November, for instance, and so that will help.
Okay, yeah, that was really good. Okay, so I think I have so many things that I could talk to you about, but I don't want to keep you too long. I did like the whole part you were talking about analyzing the pain points and seeing where you can spend some money. My sister and I always called this throwing money. Is this a problem that we can throw some money at? And it's like, I think if you have the ability, if you have a job and you have enough, discretionary money where you can choose what's going to be the best way to spend that money. I thought it was interesting, some of the ideas that you had. I thought thinking about the pain points. Can you just talk about that a little bit, about like how you can analyze your time and maybe decide on areas that maybe you could use money to help alleviate that, or buy yourself some more time to do some of the things that you really want to do?
Yeah, so people always say, well, I want more time. But the truth is, you don't want more time full stop. You want more time doing stuff you enjoy. Nobody wants more time in a traffic jam. Nobody wants more time in a boring meeting. And if we sort of analyze our time, you'll find that there are certain moments where you are pretty much wishing time away. Like you're hoping that time will move faster. And that's a little bit disconcerting when you think about it. Time in the grand sense is moving from one side of the hourglass to the other. And here are these moments where we're shoveling the sand faster, like we're trying to get it going faster through this hourglass. And I don't really like that feeling myself. I'm sure a lot of people don't. And yet it's the reality of certain moments being very unhappy. And so if you track your time, you might start to analyze, well, when am I feeling like that? When am I feeling like I wish time would go faster? And then think about, well, is there any way I could use some of my resources, whatever those might be, money or otherwise, to move some time out of this category and into either a neutral category or even a positive category? And I know for me, one sort of one that has been helpful, like on weekends, we have 4 kids. They've got lots of events, sporting events and things like that. And sometimes we'd have, the older 2 kids, for instance, have 2 different sporting events. So my husband and I could split them. Well, what do we do with the 2 younger kids? Well, they can come with us. But I have had a lot of experiences of chasing a 2-year-old around the side of somebody else's soccer game, and it is absolutely miserable, or around the side of a swim meet, trying to keep them from like leaping in the pool. And you realize like they're not having fun. You're distracted. You're kind of hoping this meet's over faster because you're, anxious and unhappy about it. And so we realized, well, we could hire a sitter for the younger 2 kids while we're dealing with the older kids. And so then there's somebody building Lego towers with the little kids, and they're happy, and we're not miserable on the sidelines missing the whole game that we're supposed to be watching in the first place. And so, that was the idea of using money to alleviate a pain point. So think about what it is. It could be a big thing. I mean, maybe you move closer to work because your commute is so miserable. But for many people, it's not going to be that. It might be something like, well, my commute is miserable, but it isn't if I listen to my favorite music. Well, how can I make sure I have that music? And, it's about investing a little bit of time and figuring that out.
Right. I was thinking too, from my perspective, so a lot of my listeners have older kids, and I think you'll find too, as your kids get older, they can help a lot at home. And so the more kind of chores and things that kids do for themselves, the more time you have. And I remember finding like it got to a point where between work and things going on at home, I couldn't do all the laundry. So all my kids started doing their own laundry. And my youngest at the time was 5. And I showed him how to do it. I think with him, when he was 5, I would put it in the wash, put it in the dryer, and he'd do all the folding and putting away. But the older ones just started doing the whole thing. And so just something as simple as that. Now in my house, we all do our own laundry. Plus, you don't have to sort it again.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
You wait till you have enough that you need a load done. You do it yourself. You fold it yourself. You put it away yourself. And if you don't, you're wearing your own wrinkly clothes. And so just even I thought about that when you were talking about that it often doesn't require any money, because as kids get older, they should be taking on more responsibility. So maybe some of the things that parents are feeling like, oh my gosh, I spend my whole day cleaning the kitchen, which my husband and I used to feel like that on weekends. It just felt like it went from one meal to clean up to meal to clean up the whole time. And you do start feeling like, I think I spent most of this weekend cleaning the kitchen. But when you get all the kids, rinse out your own dish and put it in the dishwasher. Just little things, I think, in families that we can do kind of alleviate the load we feel on those things.
Yep, that's a great idea. Definitely sharing the burden and then sharing the fun as well.
Yes, for sure. Okay, well, I loved your thing about having how effortful fun. I'm a big proponent of fun. And I think some of the time we're so tired that it's easier to just plop on the couch with our iPad or watch YouTube videos like a lot of the kids default to the effortless kind of fun. If you could just end with that, just talk about effortful fun and why that kind of creates this feeling that you are enjoying time more, you have more time.
Yeah, so as you said, there's two different kinds of fun. There's the effortless fun and the effortful fun. We probably want a little bit of both in our lives. The issue is that effortless fun is so easy, it's effortless, that winds up being the bulk of our leisure time. So people have free time, but they go for the most obvious thing, which is often scrolling around online. And it's fun, but if you think about it, it's not as fun as a lot of the effortful activities. It is a lot more awesome to have your own dinner party versus spending that same quantity of time looking at photos on Instagram of other people's dinner parties, right? You'll have great memories, you'll enjoy being with your friends. It's going to be awesome. It also takes a lot of work. and so people get tripped up on this, why should my fun be work? But if you can get yourself over that little bit of hurdle, yes, guess what? Your fun is going to take some work, but you're going to be so happy you did it. And the time will be memorable, and so you will remember it. And it turns out that our perception of time is influenced by how many memories we have of that unit of time, which I'm sure you've experienced. Your kids say the first day or two of camp seems endless because everything's so new. You're meeting so many people. You're making so many memories. Whereas a lot of life is not like that at all. And so time expands when we remember it. The night spent on Instagram, you remember none of. The night you had the dinner party, you will remember. So if you can start to shift that balance and have a little bit more of your time be that effortful fun, you'll feel like you have more time. And in my time diary, say the people who were doing that effortful fun, right, who were having adventures on this Monday night or getting together with friends, definitely felt far better about their time.
Oh, I just love that. Okay, well, we'll end there, but I do want you to just share about your amazing podcast, Best of Both Worlds, as well as your website. And I will, of course, put links in the show notes. But why don't you just share where people can find you? If you do any speaking, how can people find out about that? All of your good info.
Yeah, so please come visit my website, which is lauravanderkam.com. That's just my name. I blog usually about 4 times a week there. You can also sign up for my newsletters, all that fun stuff. I have a podcast that I co-host with Sarah Hart Unger that's called The Best of Both Worlds. We talk about how people can build their careers and raise their families and enjoy both. So that's been a lot of fun to do. I hope people will check out my books, including Off the Clock, Feel Less Busy While Getting More Done, and do a lot of speaking as well. So yeah, sure. I would love to connect with people in lots of different ways.
Well, thank you so much for being on. I love chatting with you. I have about 1 million more questions, but I'll wait. Maybe we'll do a follow-up next time you write another book or something too. But thanks so much for being on, Laura. I enjoyed chatting with you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Laura and that you'll pick up a copy of her great book, Off the Clock, Feel Less Busy While Getting More Done. If you'd like to access the notes and links to things that we talked about in this episode, visit my website at sunshine-parenting.com and search for episode 56. While you're there, if you don't already subscribe to get my emails, I'd love to have you join my community. I'm going to leave you with a quote from Off the Clock. The creation of these memories is within our control when life is oriented toward adventure. It is easier not to choose adventures of both physical and emotional varieties. It is easier not to curate them afterward. It takes time to do more with memory than shoving old receipts into books or accidentally catching a whiff of honeysuckle, but doing so stretches time. This wooing of memory creates a deeper sense of self. The future is compelling, the past is rich. This mindset is crucial to feeling like you have all the time in the world.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.